Welcome back to Debate Night. We are here in Jacksonville, Florida for the final debate in this very heated governor's race. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right back to our questions. Gentlemen, as I mentioned before the break, medical marijuana is also on the ballot this November. Governor Scott, you signed a law allowing a very mild form of marijuana to be used by Floridians suffering from cancer, epilepsy, and ALS. We spoke with Seth Hyman of Weston, Florida, who says it's almost that brand, that grade of medical marijuana almost certainly will not be enough for his 8-year-old daughter, Rebecca, whose seizures cause her to stop breathing. What is your message to Seth and his daughter, Rebecca? They say that Seth says you're not giving his daughter a real chance.
Sure. Well, first off, I want to make sure everybody gets the health care they need. Anybody that has a debilitating illness, I've been in the healthcare business, I want to make sure you get that. We did that. We started this year with Charlotte's Web. It was passed in the legislature and I signed that. And I think the right thing to do is to continue to go back through the legislative process to find treatments that work, and let's make sure we get those to individuals are all around our state. But let's make sure they are things that are safe for your family. When we're going through the Charlotte's Web discussion this year, I wanted to make sure it was safe for everybody.
Governor Crist?
I support the medical marijuana amendment. And the reason I do is I think it's a compassionate thing to do. My law partner, John Morgan, has worked very hard to get it on the ballot. I commend him for that. I think it's important to have done so because he did it out of compassion. Compassion for his brother, compassion for his father. I happen to have a sister that a little over a year ago was diagnosed with brain cancer. Thank God she's doing well. Hello, Margaret. God bless you. But, you know, if people like her were to get into pain or multiple sclerosis and they needed something less powerful than OxyContin, it's a good alternative.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Crist, I want to ask you, there have been a lot of questions raised recently about the Florida State University football team, specifically that some FSU players have gotten away with crimes ranging from car theft to alleged rape, almost as if they're as protected class. You're a proud FSU alumnus. Do you think this is a serious problem at FSU, or, as some FSU boosters would have it, is this just the media taking cheap shots?
Well, you know, I think it's a serious problem. You know, whenever you have an allegation of the types that we have seen, you've got to take it seriously. I used to be the Attorney General, and I understand what justice means. You've got to approach it in a fair way. I mean, you know, you've got to make sure that there's balance, just like there are on the scales of justice. But this isn't just an issue at Florida State University. It's an issue across our country. And we've seen a lot of focus on it, and I think that's a good thing. We've seen the stories out of the NFL. This is a problem that America has, and we have to address it in a serious way. And we have to have law enforcement that acts appropriately, and we have to have, you know, state attorneys or whoever might bring those charges do thorough investigations, get all the facts, and then move forward appropriately.
Governor Scott, does FSU have a serious problem?
Well, first off, I think every athlete, every student needs to be held to the highest standards. So I think that if there's allegations, they need to be reviewed. There shouldn't be different standards for anybody. Anybody involved, whether it's going through the schools or through the state attorneys, everybody's got to be held to the highest standard.
Are they being held to the highest standard?
Well, what's going on in particular with the FSU issue is the state attorney reviewed it, Willie Meggs reviewed it, and decided not to proceed. But it's going back through now the process at FSU, and they'll go through that process and they'll review it through the normal channels. But my goal is that every athlete, every student be held to the highest standards and the same standards.
Governor Scott, during your term as governor, Florida became second only to Texas in the number of executions. Governor Crist has said, in reference to you, quote, "This governor signs a lot of death warrants for whatever reason. I did not sign a lot of them because I took it very, very seriously," unquote. Governor Crist seems to be suggesting that you do not take this process seriously. What's your response?
Sure. Look, the death penalty is a solemn duty. It's something that's very difficult to do, but you know, these individuals have done heinous crimes. I think about the families. I think about the victims. And I review the cases, and I'm very cautious in that case, but they have done heinous crimes. I've met with the victims' families, and it gives those families some conclusion what's going on. I see them sometimes around the state. And what I think about all the time is the victims.
Governor Crist, do you really think Governor Scott doesn't take it seriously?
Well, let's look at the facts. He has signed a lot of death warrants. I signed death warrants as well. and it is the most solemn act a governor has to do as your governor. Knowing that your name on a piece of paper is going to result in the death of another human being, if that doesn't, make you think seriously about what's happening, nothing will. But just this past year, an execution here in Florida was delayed by the governor so that the Attorney General could go forward and have a political fundraiser. Now, to me, and my way of thinking, that doesn't sound like somebody's taking that solemn duty as seriously as they should. I don't understand that, and I don't know what all the facts were. The only facts I do know is that an execution was delayed because the Attorney General of Florida wanted to hold a political fundraiser, and that can't be delayed without the governor's consent.
Governor Scott?
Charlie said it. He doesn't know all the facts. He doesn't know what I go through how I think. The prayers, I do, because it's a solemn duty.
Well, did the Attorney General ask you to
Charlie,
delay it?
Would you explain while I'm talking? What I think about is those victims. If you read the cases of what these individuals have done to those victims, you won't feel good about doing it, but it's my duty to do it as governor, and I'll continue to do it.
Governor Crist?
Well, he won't answer the question. I asked him a simple question. Did the Attorney General ask you to delay the execution so she could go forward with her political fundraiser?
You can answer that, Governor Scott.
See, she asked me to delay it because it didn't work on the dates that she thought it was going to be on.
Did you know it was for a political fundraiser?
Charlie, she apologized. She apologized.
I didn't
what would
ask
you like
about
her to do?
her.
She
Did
apologized.
you know it was for a political fundraiser?
She apologized, Charlie. What would you like her to do?
He doesn't answer questions. Pleads the fifth.
Governor Crist, earlier this year, in discussing why you left the Republican Party, you said the following, quote, I couldn't be consistent with myself and my core beliefs and stay with a party that was so unfriendly toward the African-American president. I'll just go there. I was a Republican and I saw the activists and what they were doing. It was intolerable to me, unquote. So clarify, if you would, for Florida voters, are you saying there are so many racists in the Republican Party you couldn't remain a Republican?
No, I'm saying that element exists. Listen, my mother and father are Republicans. I love them to death, and they don't have a racial bone in their body, racist bone in their body. What is at work here is a pretty simple thing, and if you remember back with me to 2008 and some of the emails that were distributed about the president by some members, not all, of the Republican Party, they weren't exactly flattering. And I think you probably can research and find out what I'm talking about, but it wasn't right. And I can tell you that the reaction I had gotten from some in the Republican Party leadership wasn't tolerable to me. And it was pretty clear to me it wasn't just because I was willing to work across the aisle with a Democrat to get the recovery funds to come to Florida. It was also pretty apparent to me because he was the first African-American president. Now listen, I don't enjoy saying that. It's not what, is fun to say, but I'm going to tell the truth, and those are the facts.
Governor Scott?
Shirley, you are a divider. You're a mudslinger. You're a divider. The entire time you've been in politics, what you've done is just
you have spent millions
Crist,
and millions.
If you could.
You are a divider. You don't look at what we want to have. We live in a wonderful state. We are the best melting pot in the world. We have so many wonderful people here that have come from all over the world, and you want to try to divide people. I want everybody to have the same shot I had to live the American dream.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Crist?
Yeah, well, nothing could be further from the truth. I reached across the aisle when I was your governor. I worked with the president to get the recovery funds. This governor, Governor Rick Scott, won't work with the president even to get high-speed rail, which is so important to Central Florida and eventually the whole state. Would have been $2.4 billion to Florida. Some say 60,000 jobs. He will not lift a finger to get Medicaid expansion done. And as a result, 1 million Floridians watching tonight aren't getting health care again today as a result of that inaction on Rick Scott's part. Plus, it would bring 120,000 jobs.
Respond to that. First off, Charlie, your high speed, first off, you left me with a $3.6 billion budget deficit. You borrowed $9 billion. You borrowed everything you could. Then you left a project on the table that would cost us billions of dollars, right? And then you want to talk about Medicaid. You were governor when it passed. Why didn't you get it passed right then? Why didn't you expand it right then? I actually have worked with the federal government, and As an example, something you wouldn't do, we settled a decades-old lawsuit over the Everglades. You wouldn't lift a finger to try to settle that.
Governor Crist.
Yeah, well, the Governor Scott doesn't work with the administration. It's pretty clear. You know, he asked for their help when we maybe have a crisis like Ebola, and that's the right thing to do. But, you know, when we're offered, 60,000 jobs with high-speed rail, 120,000 jobs with Medicaid expansion, Governor Rick Scott just says no. I mean, he's all talk and no action. And as a result, those tens of thousands of Floridians that would have a job today in our stalled economy, Rick, aren't getting the employment that they need. And that's just not right. You're not on their side. I am.
Thank you, Governor.
Charlie, you're the last person that ought to be talking about jobs. You lost 832,000 jobs. Charlie, government doesn't create jobs. You can talk all you want, but you didn't take action to help create jobs. You wouldn't call on a company. You wouldn't work with economic development. We've won 400 competitive projects to get companies like Hertz and Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman to either move or expand here. Charlie, you would never even make any of those phone calls.
Let's talk about his jobs program. What Governor Scott has done is say, I will guarantee $266 million for big corporations outside of Florida to come to Florida for jobs that are promised. Well, the Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald did a great piece on this and found that only 4% of the jobs promised actually were created. That's a 96% failure on your jobs program. Now, what would I do? Because you deserve to know tonight, because in 2 weeks you got to decide. I would take that money and invest it in small businesses right here in Florida. Go to fairshotflorida.com, our website that talks about our plan.
Thank you, Governor. Let's
Can we
move
respond
on.
to that?
I'd like to move on if I could. I want to ask you a question about the 2012 shooting death of Trayvon.
Can I explain that he doesn't actually know how economic development works? We just got, GE just said they're going to add 500 jobs. So we did a project with them. It was a competitive bid and we won. Now, Charlie, they don't add the jobs in one day, and we don't give them the money until they add the jobs. So we're not out the money until then. And Charlie, you had this job. Why didn't you do all these great things you're talking about? Because you're pure talk and you take no action. That's why you lost 832,000 jobs.
Thank you very much. I was serving during the global economic meltdown, and we did the very best we could to get Florida through it, and we did. And the economy in Florida was starting to come back when you came into office because of the policies I had, like accepting the recovery money from the president. That kept us from having to fire 20,000 school teachers. Those are real jobs, Rick, and it matters to them. So I'm action, and I got things done. And I'll do it again, and I'll work with anybody, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, that will help bring jobs here, and you won't.
Thank you, Governor.
Here's Charlie's
I'd like to move on, if I could, Governor Scott. I want to talk about the 2012 shooting death of Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida, which put a spotlight on issues of race and justice and self-defense in this country, issues that we've seen time and time again, perhaps most recently and notably in Ferguson, Missouri. Here's the larger issue that I see coming up in all these issues, Governor Scott, and it's just a very simple yes or no question. Do you believe that African Americans, especially young African American men, do you think that they get a fair shake in the criminal justice system?
My goal is that they do. I can tell you about the Trayvon Martin case. I'd
rather actually have you focus on just, you said your goal is they do, but do they, and what are you doing to get them there if you want it to be there?
All right, so here's the things we've done. First of all, in the Trayvon Martin case, I sat down with the family, with Sabrina the mom and Tracy the dad. I introduced them directly to the individuals at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement that would do the investigation. I told them in person that I was going to bring in a special prosecutor to make sure that justice was served. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure in any case like that, the right thing happens. Now, here's what we've done. We have completely changed how we do juvenile justice. We've had a dramatic drop in the number of arrests since I got elected. We have the lowest recidivism out of our prison system because we've put in reentry programs. And we've helped try to make sure that if you get out of prison, you actually get a job. And you can get a job today, unlike under Charlie when you couldn't get a job. So are we making progress? Yes. Is there more work to do? Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, the one issue that experts say the next governor of Florida must deal with before it's too late, that's coming up.